Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach. I reviewed Batman Spawn the other day, and I said Todd McFarlane is the worst writer in comics, and I was kind of dreading it because I thought I was going to get like so much pushback and people would just freak out, and it was basically like saying that space is a vacuum. It's just like an objective truth of the universe. So that was not controversial at all. And then I saw this really great. Well, I read it as an essay first, but I guess it was a kind of a transcript of a video, or maybe vice versa, that Matt Draper did, where he just said Spawn is a really important character for comics publishing history, but this character sucks. And I mean, so I was saying, this character is trash. And he really isn't. He's just trash in the hands of the creator. You give Spawn to almost anyone else, and it is a viable character. I noped out on Spawn real quick. I'm talking like issue 1. I was flipping through issues 2 and 3, and they did not look familiar at all. So I think I only got issue 1. But I kind of knew that he was not going to be a good writer because Todd McFarlane had been given his own Spider-Man series after Amazing Spider-Man, and that writing was just god-awful. So I totally missed out on this era. I was aware of Neil Gaiman creating Angela and that being some issues. I was aware of Dave Sim not wanting his issue to be reprinted. I literally did not know that there was this 4-issue period fairly early in the publication of this series where Todd was just like, here, take it. So there were only 7 previous issues for the writers to work with and learn about the character, and I'm pretty sure that all of them just skimmed the issues. So this was a very interesting exercise. It's Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Dave Sim, Frank Miller. I don't know if I would say everyone brings their A game, but everyone actually tried. There was a sort of what I will call benevolent condescension from all of them. You're taking a character created by someone who's not a writer, who had actively mocked writers. Todd was very vocal in saying people buy comics for the art. The writer doesn't matter. But then he wrote, and everyone was like, holy shit, this is awful. So I think he was trying to flex by saying, well, I can afford other good writers. I would say Alan Moore's issue is my least favorite. I honestly do not think he read the previous issues. I think he skimmed them. So he just kind of does this. I'm not going to call it a Shaggy Dog story because things he writes are built upon later. It's like Shaggy Dog lore. So he just kind of vamps about the different levels of heaven and introduces this weird-ass angel. At the end, we get to see serial killer Billy Kincaid become Fat Spawn. And then the grand finale is Malabolgia saying, "Caca happens, little buddy. Caca happens." Okay. This is clearly just a paycheck for Alan Moore. My favorite issue was the one by Neil Gaiman, in which he creates medieval Spawn. Angela is a much better creation, and then also Cagliostro is introduced in this issue. And this one's just good. I'm not really a fan of Neil Gaiman per se, he's just not my cup of tea. But he seems to have seen this as an opportunity that, hey, there's nothing out there. In fact, in the Frank Miller issue, one of the bums from that alley Spawn hangs out in, they're literally like, hey, are you ever going to tell us anything about you? Because nobody knows anything. So Neil Gaiman seemed to take this not just as a challenge, but he seemed to be genuinely excited that there was this popular franchise that had almost no lore. So he went in there and he just started creating. I mean, he was literally, this is almost like one of those Dungeons and Dragons books where they just explain to you how things happen. Like he's literally explaining the world in these caption boxes. I never really got Spawn. I was like, oh, he sold his soul to the devil, and when he runs out, and when he quote runs out of power, the devil will claim him again. It's like, well, he was an assassin. He was already going to hell. But it turns out that the hell hierarchy is more complicated, and he explains it very well. That certain people are picked to host this hell spawn symbiote kind of. And he even explains like the typical reactions. That when they first manifest, which is a few years after they died, so as to sever the connections to family and friends they had when they died, that they will still exhibit social traits as a human, but then ultimately their goal is to serve Malebolgia either as one of the officers in his army or to feed lower castes of demons. I mean, he's just straight up just explaining the lore while creating it. I gotta say that Spawn's default status as a guy who literally just hangs out in an alley with bums, it's not funny. It's not fun. It reminds me of when Mags created a sci-fi adventure series called Vagrant Queen. It's like there's this weird disconnect in the head of comic book creators where they don't realize what's repellent to most people. Nobody dreams of hanging out in an alley with bums. And this is not just like, Eric Larson will always complain, oh, people call Savage Dragon a police officer, but he was only a police officer for the first 3.5 years, and now it's his son, and blah, 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 blah. Bro, that was the default for a long time. Every story would just be some serial killer would go to kill a bum, some gangster would go to kill a bum. And yes, Todd's art is not as good as it was at Marvel because he's holding different responsibilities. It's still good to me. Actually, this whole issue just rocks. It is legitimately excellent. If you're not a Spawn fan and you're not a Neil Gaiman fan, I think you will still love this issue. It was awesome. Then we get to Spawn 10, and honestly, I don't want to scroll down because I don't want to get a strike from Dave Sim. I guess I can show the cover. So apparently he has never allowed this to be reprinted. I've read a lot of praise for this, for being very meta and groundbreaking, and ultimately, it's just a guy congratulating himself and his host. It's this meta commentary on creator-owned comics versus comics that are created for corporations. It is artfully done, but at the end, it's just Dave Sim clapping for himself and Todd McFarlane. So then we get to the Frank Miller issue. I love this one. This was so much fun. So we get Spawn being woken up by one of the bums. And again, this is just one of those things that an editor who is not your employee is going to say. It's like, hey Todd, you're really great at these splash pages. Maybe not a giant face of a balding, goateed, overweight bum. Maybe something better. Maybe do the opposite angle where Spawn is jolting to being awake. And then it would be a mystery of, oh, who is he reacting to? So he basically freaks out, and there's kind of a joke that the previous 3 issues were dreams or hallucinations, demons and new age girls and really mean angels, and a talking aardvark. A talking aardvark! That's good. That's funny. Frank Miller is clearly having fun, and he writes a story that's better than Spawn Batman. And then another bum is like, you know, big guy, we've been hanging out for a while now, but I ain't heard so much as a sob story out of you. Not so much as a she done me wrong. I don't mean to poke my nose where it don't belong, but who the hell are you? So this is a gang war between 2 gangs. One is called the Creeps and the Nerds. One of the Creeps is killed. The first member we see is a woman saying, "Save me," so it gets sympathy on their side. But what we ultimately find out is that it's 2 groups of idiots just having a meaningless gang war. Cool splash page. Some really nice effects. And then we get to learn about the 2 gangs. This is the Nerds, and this is Byron. You can tell from the arrows that say, this is Byron. And the Creeps don't like the Nerds, and the Nerds don't like the Creeps. And this guy has letters that are backwards for some reason. It's actually fine. This was a lot of fun. The Neil Gaiman issue was a legitimately great story that built a lot of lore while still having a good fight, while still being very entertaining. And that one had the best art from Todd McFarlane. This one is just dopey fun, and I loved it. So here's the other gang, the Creeps. And you just get these fun double-page splashes of just a bunch of people being shredded in a gang war. Apparently this alley is a direct conduit between the turf of these 2 rival gangs. Creeps kill nerds. Nerds kill creeps. All creeps die. All nerds die. Only Byron still lives. Byron rules the alley. Byron owns the alley. So then Spawn says, let's play Alien. Then he teleports inside of Byron and crawls out of his chest. Very jauntily, I might add, from that expression. And then Frank Miller realized he had this huge plot hole because earlier when one woman was killed, they're like, hey, we got to get this one dead body out of this alley or it's going to bring the heat down on us. And now there's like 60 dead bodies, and Spawn's like, oh no, it's fine, the cops will clean it up. And then it just ends. So the grand tally is one story that was just spinning its wheels, one that created so much lore that it ended up in a lawsuit that Neil Gaiman won, one that was just metatextual backpatting, and one that was just dopey, violent fun. My favorite one was the Neil Gaiman one. My least favorite was the Alan Moore issue because he was just basically riding around the character because there was nothing there. But overall, I gotta say, this whole experience was entertaining and fun, and it was much better than reading anything written by Todd McFarlane. So before I go, First Kill graphic novel, link is in the description. Thanks for watching.